In Detroit, a huge development in the Manoogian Mansion scandal involving a stripper who later wound up dead.
That scandal revolves around ex-mayor, Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, his wife, and the current Attorney General in Michigan, Mike Cox, who's now running for governor.
For years, it's been rumored there was a wild party at the mayor's mansion that several high-profile people attended.
My mom was a very popular stripper in the early 2000s, and as you can imagine, that industry, you meet a lot of powerful, rich, famous people. My mom ended up having an affair with the mayor of the city, who was married at the time. So, yeah, things got messy, and the mayor of Detroit's wife actually assaulted my mother. Instead of paying my mother hush money, the mayor decided to pay off cops in the city to murder my mother.
Lawyers for the city of Detroit say they know who killed Tamara Greene, the exotic dancer who reportedly danced at a rumored party at the Manoogian Mansion in 2002. But they say they cannot have her suspected killer identified publicly because it may compromise the investigation and jeopardize the safety of an informant.
So who was exotic dancer Tamara Greene talking to among the friends, associates, and employees of then Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick? And why are numbers with the city's prefix 999 or 220 so often found in Greene's cell phone records?
Tammy Greene's telephone bill is replete with phone calls to and from 999 and 220. Now, we know that 999 and 220 are the exchanges used by the City of Detroit employees.
I want people to understand that I would never disrespect my God, my wife, or my children.
As the scandal swirled, Kilpatrick fled to Washington, where he adamantly told us in an exclusive interview,
I don't whore around on my wife, and I don't have wicked nude parties at my house.
Well, it is the unsolved murder mired in the scandal surrounding ex-Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick.
Tamara Greene was a stripper, rumored to have been at that mythical but never proven party at the Manoogian Mansion shortly after she was killed.
Take you down another level. Get you dancing with the devil.
Tamara Greene was born on May 11, 1976 in Detroit, Michigan. To her mother, Brenda Greene, her father was never in the picture, and growing up on the east side of Detroit was hard on Tamara and her siblings. Her mom worked multiple jobs in order to provide for her kids, but it just wasn't enough, and everyday basic living was a struggle. Growing up, she attended a local church pastored by Ken Hampton, the leader of Grace Bible Chapel. He tried his best to play the role of a father figure to Tamara and her siblings. He described their living conditions as dirt poor and spoke about how him and other members of the church would often have to take food and other supplies to their home. He said that he would have conversations with Tamara and she would tell him how she couldn't wait to grow up so she could finally get some money and never have to live in poverty again.
She came up in poverty. They were dirt poor. I mean, there were times when they didn't have food to eat. We had to bring them food, and the father was not there. And she swore that she would never, if she had an opportunity, live like she was raised, if she just stays on that straight and narrow course. No one could have dreamed that things would have made the turns that they did.
She attended Martin Luther King Senior High School, but at 16 years old, she would become a teenage mom, giving birth to her first child, Jonathan. Despite becoming a mother at such a young age, she still graduated from high school in 1994. A year later, she gave birth to her second child, a girl named Ashley. Tamara chased her dream of being in the medical field and started to attend nursing school. But until she graduated and her career took off, she was in desperate need of cash. And Tamara had an idea of exactly what she could do to bring in money to help support her family. She would use her God-given beauty in order to obtain all of the worldly material items that she dreamed of as a little girl growing up on the east side of Detroit in poverty. According to the father of her daughter, a man named T. Jackson, he stated that he seen the change in Tamara. She started running with high-profile drug dealers in Detroit, living life in the fast lane, chasing fast money. Hanging with the local dope boys, Tamara spent a lot of time in strip clubs. She seen the dancers get into the bag and knew that it could be easy money for her. And that's when she decided to take up a career as an exotic dancer. Tamara's mom let her know that she didn't agree with her decision to become a stripper. She knew how dangerous that lifestyle could potentially be. Even if Tamara just viewed it as dancing for money, her mother knew that she could very well be dancing for the devil.
Bring your body, baby, I could bring you fame.
I got to know her through one of the bouncers who was in charge of security at the job. He was, like many other people, actually somewhat of a fan of Tamara. We worked together at a entertainment bar called 007, which was on the east side of Detroit. It was a topless bar. The brief time that I encountered her, she was a very humble, professional person, considering the type of work or the line of work that we were in at that time. She was like strictly business, very classy when she danced. She wasn't there for the whole shift. She just came in like for a few hours to see a few of her customers, people who requested her, and she never hung around the bar afterwards. It was like she professionally did her dances, and then before the end of the evening, she was already gone.
At that time, she just wanted to be a nurse. Going to school to get the prerequisites and for nursing, and trying to work part-time at different places and all that line to try to make a better life. You know, at some point, she recognized that her assets, you know, visual assets could be a potential tool to help her out of circumstances. And she progressed into, you know, dancing and doing other things on that line. And started making a lot of money doing that. And she started having a taste for hanging with guys who were the street element. She dated drug dealers. A lot of those guys, you know, pick her up from my place. I remember it stopped being drug dealers more towards the officials or whatever like that, because I could see through the tent of the car. The guys had suits on. You know, you start thinking about who was this guy, who was that guy.
To city officials.
Yeah.
By the year 2000, Tamara was knee-deep in the stripping business. She chose the stage name Strawberry and became one of the most popular and highly requested strippers in all of Detroit. Tamara worked at a club called All Stars on 8 Mile. She also worked at a club right off of 7 Mile too. She would do private parties and other events, making thousands of dollars in a night. But as her reputation continued to grow in the adult entertainment business in Detroit, Tamara's clientele started to change as well. It went from local drug dealers to men in suits, city officials, and politicians. Although Tamara did have a boyfriend, a local drug dealer named Eric Big E Mitchell, who had no problem with her career as a stripper and would often accompany her when she went to go dance. It's been alleged that one of Tamara's most prominent clients was the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, and also running for governor, a politician named Mike Cox. It's said that he was the one who introduced her to a man that would change her life forever, a young up-and-coming politician in the city of Detroit named Kwame Kilpatrick. Both of his parents were highly influential politicians in the city of Detroit and in the state of Michigan. His father, Bernard Kilpatrick, was the head of the Wayne County Commission and would later start his own consulting firm called Maestro. He had a lot of political power in Detroit and was a gatekeeper when it came to who did and who didn't receive city contracts for construction. And his mother, Carolyn Kilpatrick, served on the United States House of Representatives for the state of Michigan. Kwame attended Cass Tech High School in Detroit, and he would go on to attend Florida A&M University, where he pledged Alpha and got his degree in political science. Just a few years after graduating, Kwame was already rising up the political ranks in Detroit, becoming a member of the Michigan House of Representatives 9th District after his mother Carolyn vacated the seat so she could run for Congress, putting her son in prime position for political success. And by 2001, Kwame was a candidate to become the mayor of Detroit. He was going up against a very popular politician and former police officer named Gil Hill, known for playing the role of Inspector Todd in the 1980s Eddie Murphy film Beverly Hills Cop. On New Year's Day of 2002, Kwame Kilpatrick was officially sworn in as mayor, making history in the city, along with impassioned speeches that he would give to the residents of Detroit, vowing that the struggling city would rise once again with him as mayor. There was a point in time when Kwame Kilpatrick had the same political trajectory as a young Barack Obama. They were both viewed as the future of the Democratic Party. 2002 would also be the same year that he began a whirlwind affair with Tamara Greene, which would lead to one of the most infamous events in Detroit's history, the never proven but often talked about Manoogian Mansion Party, the historical home that served as the living quarters for each mayor of Detroit since the 1920s. But it's said that in the fall of 2002, Kwame decided to celebrate becoming the youngest mayor in the city's history by throwing a legendary party at his new home, the Manoogian Mansion. It's said that the party was overflowing with liquor, cocaine, and weed, as well as the top strippers from all over the city. But at a certain point during the party, everything would stop, and all eyes would be on the man of the hour, the new mayor of Detroit. He was about to receive a special lap dance from his favorite girl, Strawberry, Tamara Greene. But during the seductive act, the front door of the home would swing open, and it would be none other than the mayor's wife, Carlita Kilpatrick. She was scheduled to be out of town during this time, but plans changed, and now she was staring at her husband with another woman in his arms. Carlita became enraged witnessing the wild scene that was taking place inside of her home. According to witness accounts, she grabbed a table leg or some type of blunt object and began to attack Tamara. Members of Kwame's security team would have to pull Carlita off of her and escorted Tamara out of the mansion. But according to former Detroit EMS Lieutenant Michael Kearns, they received a call that night that came from a gas station from a young woman who identified herself as Tamara Greene. She stated that she had been attacked by the mayor's wife. He stated that as paramedics were treating her injury, she kept repeating that they couldn't treat her this way and that they weren't going to get away with it. It's been said that Kwame made everyone who attended swear that the party would always remain a secret. But in politics, secrets are never safe. Leaks of information would occur, and once the media reported on the infamous party, it would be the first of many scandals during Kwame Kilpatrick's tenure as Detroit's mayor. But early on, the story wasn't about Tamara Greene. It was outrage from the fact that the young, wild mayor was throwing Uncle Luke-style parties at the historical mansion. According to a woman named Sandy Cardenas, who worked as a police dispatcher at the time of the alleged incident, said that she remembered receiving several calls one night in the fall of 2002. It was a disturbance call coming from the Manoogian Mansion, and it was listed as a high priority run, drawing supervisors and officers from 4 different precincts from around the city. But when officers arrived, they were locked out of the home, and even though they could hear people inside, nobody would come to the door. But despite the scandal and rumors, Kwame was able to keep a pristine image in the public eye, presenting himself as the perfect family man, holding up his wife and his children. But according to people who were once a part of his inner circle and a part of his executive security unit, there were times when Kwame was doing so much dirt behind the scenes, they believed that the time would come where they would have to kill somebody in order to keep his secrets. That's what happened to police officer Harold Neldrop, who was a part of Kwame's security, but once he realized what was going on, he knew that he had to get out of the detail.
See, I was the oldest person in the executive protection unit except for Ron Fleming, who was charged. I was one of the oldest guys there. Me and Walt, as a matter of fact, even before they got rid of us, we used to talk to each other and say, man, I think, we might need to get out of here. It was just too much going on. He'd go to massage places, I know Christine Beatty's husband worked midnight. And so one time he had us take over to Christine's house. We were sitting in the driveway. It was late at night, probably 1 o'clock in the morning. We said, man, what the hell is he doing in there? And her husband at work. So we had to sit and contemplate on what was we going to do if Lou Beatty shows up. As a police officer, you have to discuss. Like a Secret Service would have to be president, okay? So we had to make the decision, how do we stop him from going in? I mean, I hate to say this, It was to the point that we were like thinking like, hopefully you got to kill this guy.
Kwame Kilpatrick could be seen charming TV viewers on major outlets like CNN, ESPN, and countless others, being touted as the hip-hop mayor, the future of politics. But in the city of Detroit, word was going around that Kwame was moving less like a mayor and more like a mob boss, going to different local businesses and refusing to pay for service because of his status in the city, funneling taxpayers' dollars into his own pocket so he could live a lavish lifestyle, buying brand new cars, homes, and exotic trips for his family. Corruption and extortion ran rampant in the Kilpatrick administration. He made himself and his close family and friends millions of dollars by controlling who did and who didn't receive city contracts. If you wanted to build anything in the city of Detroit, you were going to have to pay Kwame, and you were going to have to pay him a lot of money.
Shortly before his son takes office, Bernard sets up a new consulting firm, Maestro Associates.
What is a maestro? You see? In other words, he told everybody, I'm in charge. You wanted something done, you had to go to Bernard, the consultant, Maestro. Maestro pre-approve it, then you will meet with the son.
Despite the red flags, the Kilpatrick administration is off to a roaring start.
What's interesting about that, when I think about these things, more than a decade later, is that there was still enough optimism around the city, around this 31-year-old kid who he would often refer to as the nephew or the grandson of the older generation of this city. Kwame could walk into a room and, man, soak it up. And especially seniors, they fell in love with him. Kwame was on top of the world. I think that only the junior U.S. Senator from Illinois, Barack Obama, might have been the only more popular African-American elected official in America.
He knew that he owned the city and became intoxicated with power. But Kwame had a problem that threatened his political empire. Tamara Greene wanted to be financially compensated for what happened to her at the Manoogian Mansion. It said that she threatened to expose the mayor and other politicians in his circle. According to some of Tamara's close family and friends, it said that she shared with them what she had done and how she told the mayor that she was going to expose him if he didn't pay her. But after she shared the story, those who cared about her let her know that they felt like she was playing a dangerous game. By this point, Tamara had another child, a baby girl named India, and it was rumors around the city that the father was none other than the mayor himself. And since their relationship was coming to an end, she was going to cash out on her situation with the powerful politician. But this decision would cause Tamara's life to take a very dark turn. She started to receive strange phone calls from unfamiliar numbers. Sometimes when she answered, the person on the other line would make threats, or they wouldn't say anything at all.
Today, the father of Tamara Greene's oldest child told me that she was visibly shaken on many occasions, even terrified by the threats that she had received from unknown persons.
And she just begins to wail at the top of her lungs. You don't know what I've been going through.
Flagg says she was terrified of the people who were following her, calling her, threatening her life, as in the unidentified man who chased her in a fast-moving car.
She was driving fast. She said she was nervous. And when she got to the location where the people were, she said she just jumped out of the car. And this person just fly by the car, just drives, speeds off past her, just looking at her, grimming her, looking at her real, real hard, real mad, real angry.
Tamara would tell those close to her that she feared for her life and she no longer felt safe in her own home. So she started to live with different family and friends. The father of Tamara's son, Jonathan, he says he remembers being waken up in the middle of the night multiple times by Tamara. She would tell him that she was afraid and how she needed a place to stay for the night. According to her pastor, Ken Hampton, who was the only father figure that Tamara ever knew, he says that he remembers receiving a phone call from her. She said it was urgent and that she needed to meet with him right away. He said that he knew something was very wrong and that she wasn't just scared, she was absolutely terrified. He told her that if it's this serious, it's time to get the police involved, but she immediately told him that the people she was dealing with was too powerful and that they had full control over law enforcement in Detroit. There was nowhere to turn.
called me on occasion if she had an issue with various men, and I would speak to her as a father would speak to his daughter regarding how to handle them. The last couple weeks of her life, the final call, she called me and said, "We need to talk." I could tell that there was trauma. There was trauma there, and that this needed to be a face-to-face meeting. If it's that serious, we need to meet at a neutral place, just in case she was followed, a safe place. And so we met at a Bible bookstore, Grand River in Greenfield. She didn't really let me know other than to say that she felt that her life was in danger. I'm afraid. Then I stopped it right there. I said, well, your mother is out of state. You need to go right away. Even then, I didn't know how grave the situation was. And there we talked, and I could look in her eyes and I could discern that she was afraid.
Despite everything that she had going on in her life, she knew that she had to keep making money to provide for her kids, so they would never have to go through what she did growing up. She was in the process of opening up her own boutique dedicated to exotic dancer attire. She also continued to make money off her reputation as a popular stripper in the city, and she continued to do private parties, often accompanied by her boyfriend Eric Big E Mitchell. In early April of 2003, Tamara was scheduled to work a party in Southfield, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, and it was being held at a Residence Inn hotel. She was accompanied by her boyfriend Eric Big E Mitchell. It was a party full of hustlers and big-time drug dealers from all over the city. Everything was going well early on, but by the end of the night, it would take a dark turn when a man who attended the party attempted to sleep with Tamara. He was described as very short at only 5 feet tall, but when Tamara refused his advances, he began to viciously attack her. Tamara's boyfriend Eric Mitchell had to come to her rescue, beating up her attacker and causing so much of a disturbance that the Southfield police were called. But it seems like no one was arrested in result of the incident, and no police report was ever filed. It was a scary time for Tamara. It seemed like everywhere she turned, danger followed. On April 16th of 2003, her ex-boyfriend Ernest Flagg recalled a story of Tamara banging at his door in the middle of the night. She was shivering with fear and told him that she was just being followed by a mysterious van, and when she noticed it turned into a chase, that she was luckily able to escape. She started to regret her decision of exposing the high-power politicians that she was involved with, because now she had this inescapable feeling that she was running out of time. Tamara confided in her mother about everything that she had been going through, the constant nightmares, the dark cloud that had been cast over her life, and the eerie feeling that she just couldn't escape. And unfortunately, her premonitions would be proven correct, because in the early morning hours of April 30th, 2003, Tamara would be leaving the club from a night of dancing at work. She was accompanied by her boyfriend Eric Big E Mitchell. She gave him a ride to his house near the Roselawn area in West Outer Drive. When Tamara arrived at the house, she pulled up to a curb in the front. Her and Eric Mitchell started to have a conversation. His seat was reclined all the way back. Big E noticed a suspicious vehicle approaching in the driver's side window, and it looked like whoever was driving the vehicle had a gun. Sensing that something was about to go down, Big E opened his passenger door and began to try to make an escape, but he failed to alert Tamara of the impending danger coming their way. By the time she realized what was going on, she was in the middle of a hail of gunfire. Tamara was shot 3 times and Eric was hit 5, although he still managed to make it to a neighbor's house to tell them to call the police. He would ultimately survive his injuries, but Tamara wouldn't be so lucky and was pronounced dead at the scene. Eric Mitchell was well known and Tamara was extremely popular. Rumors began to spread in the city of Detroit about who could have carried out the vicious attack, but it would soon be obvious who was responsible for Tamara's death, because when the neighbors spoke to law enforcement, they told them that when Eric Mitchell knocked on their door, he kept saying that Little D did it, a local drug dealer in Detroit who had an ongoing beef with Eric Mitchell. They had been gunning for each other for a while, and the beef was well known. And finally, Direct King got the drop on him, but he didn't kill his target. He killed an innocent woman, Tamara Greene. But it was obviously an open and shut case, another tale of a Detroit street beef turned deadly. The lead homicide detective on the case would be a man named Mike Carlisle, and he said that he knew exactly what happened to Tamara Greene. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to police reports, on the night that Eric Mitchell was shot and knocked on the neighbor's door for help, he allegedly said that Little D just shot me. He was very familiar with Direct King and said that all the evidence pointed directly to him. They also had an informant named Tommy Lee Hodge, who served time with Direct King in jail, and said during their lockup, he admitted to him that he was the shooter in the Tamara Greene case. The vehicle used in the murder, a white Chevy Trailblazer, is also identical to the same vehicle that Direct King's girlfriend had during the time, who allegedly told them that the incident Tamara Greene had 2 weeks before her death at the Residence Inn Hotel wasn't just some unsatisfied customer. It was Direct King, Little D. He was the short man described as having an altercation with Eric Mitchell. It said that he showed up to the hotel unexpectedly and confronted the couple, and an altercation ensued. And according to Detroit Police Department homicide detectives, they interviewed Tamara Greene's grandmother, who allegedly told them that it was Direct King who attacked Tamara 2 weeks prior to her death. But despite having what they said to be overwhelming evidence against Direct King, something strange would happen in the case. He would never be charged in the death of Tamara Greene, although lead homicide detective Mike Carlisle maintains that he is the one who committed the crime. He did end up sending Direct King to prison for decades, but it was on a different case for attempted murder. But in Little D's opinion, Mike Carlisle is a dirty cop who got him sent away on bogus charges. He says that he's being used as a pawn in a much bigger conspiracy inside of a much more wicked game. To prove his innocence, he would take a lie detector test, and there was no deception detected. He passed with flying colors.
You say that you had nothing to do with her death.
Exactly. I took lie detector tests. The victim said I didn't do it. I mean, what else could you ask for?
The victim said you didn't do it.
Yeah.
It is the survivor.
Yeah.
Indeed, the survivor was Eric Mitchell, who was shot 5 times, while the driver, Tamara Greene, was shot 3 times. She was behind the wheel, closest to the street and the drive-by vehicle. Carlisle says just how many times bullets struck the victims could be an indication that the shooter was after Mitchell and that Greene was simply in the line of fire. According to police, Mitchell is King's former partner in the drug business. Are you surprised that they named you publicly, but they haven't come to you with charges?
Yeah, of course. That's crazy. It done tore my life to pieces with that. My family, kids, everything.
King is now serving 14 to 25 years in state prison for attempted murder and other charges not related to the Greene case. But for several reasons, Carlisle believes he should be charged in Greene's murder. Among the elements of an arrest warrant, the white SUV that was the drive-by vehicle that night.
Little D's wife was in possession of a white Lincoln Navigator. That she affirmed in a statement also. All right, that by itself doesn't mean a lot.
But it's one item on a list of circumstantial evidence, the fact that King is left-handed, as was the shooter, according to witnesses. The fact that officers, first at the scene, said Mitchell told them Little D was the person that he was having problems with. And then there's the statement made by a big-time drug kingpin named Tommy Hodges, who claims Little D admitted to him he was responsible for the drive-by.
And Tommy Hodges gave me a statement about Little D approaching him and told him what had occurred that night. Now, one of the things Tommy Hodges asked Little D was, well, what about the old girl? And the only thing Little D told him, she was in the way.
Everything that Carlisle ever did pertaining to me is a dead end, and it's made up everything. If you look at the statements, you look at the evidence, Carlisle is just a crooked cop, and hopefully it'll come out in the future.
Did you guys get into a fight before she died? Because I also heard that.
No, not an actual fight, no.
No? Did you get into an argument?
Yeah.
About her dancing at a party?
Well, something like that.
Did you guys have beef when she died, or had it been settled by then?
No, we have never had any beef.
Did you think she was a nice person, or she was a tough lady, or what was she to you?
She definitely was a nice person.
The city of Detroit
is supposed to help people instead of hinder them.
And he says the city's story doesn't add up. The city claims Derek King was the killer, that Tammy was an accidental victim of a drug hit intended to kill the passenger in her car. Jonathan Bond says his mom was the target.
My mother took 3 shots, okay? 3 perfect shots, okay? While the car was moving, okay? Now, these type of shots, it was impossible to be accidental.
And listen to this. Police went to Derek King. He denied it. Police said, then take a lie detector test. King said, no problem. He took the polygraph and passed it with flying colors.
That guy did not kill my mom. That guy hasn't been prosecuted. You know, he hasn't been charged with anything. You know, he took a lie detector, passed it. This guy told the truth, you know, so he has nothing to do with my mother at all.
Probably right.
Yeah, and somehow, like, as the car came up, her boyfriend at the time, Eric Mitchell, when he saw that vehicle, he knew something bad was about to happen.
Yeah.
So he dove into the wheel well of the car, and she sort of just turned to look. Didn't know what was going on, obviously, and she was shot in the face, or in the side of the neck, because she was on this side. And the boyfriend was shot. I think he got hit in the leg. He had non-life-threatening injuries.
Right.
But she was hit because she was looking. She was like here. She turned. She was hit in the side of the neck.
Despite the narrative of Derek King being the shooter, the case officially remained open, which means it still needed to be solved. That responsibility would go to Homicide Sergeant Mary Ann Stevenson. She worked closely with her supervisor, Lieutenant Billy Jackson, who was in charge of the Squad 8 Homicide Unit, uncovering new evidence, as well as taking the spotlight off of Derek King, pointing towards something much more nefarious behind the death of Tamara Greene. But it seemed like the more she would report progress to her superiors, the more agitated they became. Sergeant Stevenson stated that she checked the homicide file that was going to be turned in on the Tamara Greene case, and she noticed that it was missing important information and evidence, like the videotape that Tamara Greene's family turned in to her from the funeral. It showed members of Mayor Kilpatrick's Executive Protection Unit, as well as officers of the Detroit Police Department. They were all in attendance, even though when they were interviewed, they stated that they had no idea who Tamara Greene was. Sergeant Stevenson said when she brought this to the attention of her superiors, the very next day she was reassigned to a new unit. They sent her to Precinct 9, a place known for where they sent officers who've fallen out of favor. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Jackson, would also be relieved of his duties and sent to a different precinct. The Squad 8 Homicide Unit would be taken over by a man named Lieutenant Alvin Bowman, who would play a pivotal role in the Tamara Greene case. He took over command of the unit in late 2003, but he would barely last 90 days. Lieutenant Bowman was just as passionate about solving the Tamara Greene case as Sergeant Stevenson was previously, but it didn't take long for him to start to get the feeling that people in power didn't want the case to be actually solved. They really just wanted it to go away. Despite the subtle reminders from his superiors not to take the case too far, Lieutenant Bowman would continue to push forward, uncovering new information on the death of Tamara Greene. The local news covered the story almost daily. It got so much attention that the Michigan State Police got involved to provide more resources to the investigation. Lieutenant Bowman wanted to meet with them so they could exchange information, and he can show them the evidence that he already accumulated. On March 9, 2004, he had a meeting with the Michigan State Police. The commander of his unit was present as well. He was one of the people who didn't approve of Lieutenant Bowman's aggressive tactics in the Tamara Greene case. Lieutenant Bowman informed the Michigan State Police that he had credible information that the Manoogian Mansion party did in fact happen. Not only that, there was another stripper who danced at the party and had similar circumstances to Tamara Greene, but she ended up being murdered down in Georgia in a similar fashion, and he didn't think it was a coincidence. He allegedly showed them evidence of Tamara Greene's murder being an orchestrated hit, not a street beef gone wrong. Lieutenant Bowman showed them cell phone records that showed dozens of text messages being sent between Kwame Kilpatrick and his Executive Protection Unit between the hours of 1:30 a.m. and 5:30 a.m., the before and after time frame of Tamara Greene's murder. He also stated that the bullets used in her death was the exact same caliber used by the Detroit Police Department during that time. But on March 10th of 2004, Lieutenant Bowman was relieved of his duties as the supervisor of the Squad 8 homicide unit, and he stated that he knows he was sent there as a punishment for his investigation into Mayor Kilpatrick. The Michigan State Police wasn't able to make it too far in their case either, because according to Officer Mark Cribbs, their investigation was immediately shut down by Kwame Kilpatrick's good friend and the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, Mike Cox. He immediately dismissed the claims of obstructing the case against Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, letting it be known that only the governor of the state had the power to shut down the investigation. It was then transferred to a cold case homicide unit headed up by Sergeant Odell Godbold, but he would meet the same fate as everyone else who attempted to solve the Tamara Greene puzzle. After he submitted his homicide file to the Major Crimes Unit in early 2005, he was reprimanded and then demoted. It was becoming clear that certain people in law enforcement were protecting elected officials. 2005 was an eventful year for Mayor Kilpatrick, and now former police officer Lieutenant Alvin Bowman was suing the city of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick, and the chief of police, Ella Bully Cummings, who was accused of playing a major role in the cover-up of the Tamara Greene murder investigation.
Come to my attention that recently the media has put information out that is derived from an affidavit of a former police officer of this department, Lieutenant Alvin Bowman. What I will tell you is that many of his statements are reprehensible. They have besmirched the men and women of this department that come to work every single day and put their lives on the line. If this lieutenant has information or even had information concerning the death of Miss Greene, he should have and he should turn that information over to this police department. This is an ongoing, open investigation. Every lead that we receive is being followed up on by our homicide unit. There is no cover-up in this police department into the death of Miss Greene. Our officers are doing everything that they can to bring the killer to justice, and any information that not only Lieutenant Bowman has, but any other member or any other citizen has, we're asking that you call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-SPEAK-UP, give us that information, and we'll follow up on it. Yes. You know, I can only answer so many questions because this is an open, ongoing investigation. And I think you know, the problem with that is I'm always limited. And I need for the public to understand that the allegations, the statements that are in this affidavit, what concerns me is a broad brush has been painted against the men and women in this department. And I think as their leader, their chief of police, as a police officer myself, for over 30 years, that is reprehensible. It is.
When the sergeant brought me the case file, evidence was missing. Reports was missing. And they were all stored in a general area where it was accessible to anybody that worked there. So I felt that the interest was not in solving the case. One of the sergeants called me out in the hall. Sir, you've been transferred. I said, what? I don't know what happened. You know, the executive deputy chief called and said you were transferred. You know, it was about that case. I said, yeah.
He ultimately won his case and was awarded $200,000 on the grounds that his transfer to the Midnight Unit was punishment for his investigation into the Tamara Greene case, causing adversity in the workplace and forcing him to retire. That very same year, Tamara's family would file a $150 million lawsuit against the city of Detroit and the mayor. The family hired lawyer Norman Yatuma. He would go on a media campaign calling out the mayor and the corruption of Detroit city officials behind the death of Tamara Greene. With the allegations of corruption and even murder, Kwame knew that his political career was in a bad place. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy announced that she would be launching an investigation into the corruption associated with the Kilpatrick administration. His image as a loyal family man took a hit as well with the numerous cheating allegations. Not to mention that his approval rating for the citizens of Detroit was at an all-time low. The odds were stacked against him, but Kwame would hire a political PR firm called the Citizens for Honest Government, which changed the narrative of the embattled mayor. They came up with a very controversial campaign, making it seem as if he was a victim of a media agenda and being targeted by his rivals due to racism. In November of 2005, Kwame would pull out a miraculous victory, being re-elected as the mayor of Detroit. But there will be controversy behind his win. His opponent accused him of rigging the election, stating that fraud had taken place when it came to counting the votes. But his second term in office would be marred with just as much controversy as his first, and things that wouldn't go away from the past would continue to affect his political future. Back in 2003, a civil lawsuit was filed by former police officers Harold Nelthrope and Gary Brown, who were also former members of the mayor's executive protection unit, stating that their careers were ruined because the mayor wanted to cover up his extramarital affairs, as well as other nefarious acts that he was involved in. In 2007, they were awarded $6.5 million in damages, but it also proved that the mayor and his chief of staff, Christine Beatty, had both lied under oath about their relationship. Scandalous text messages between the two married individuals would be released to the public under the Freedom of Information Act. The mayor was ultimately convicted of perjury and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 4 months in jail and had his law license revoked. Unfortunately for him, this was just the beginning of the end. Members of the Detroit City Council thought it was a bad idea to have a convicted felon acting as mayor and called for Kwame to resign. Some of the powerful political figures from around the city and all over the state of Michigan rallied together, calling for the resignation of Kwame Kilpatrick, including his old friend who allegedly introduced him to Tamara Greene, Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox. But despite the overwhelming pressure to leave office, Kwame refused. There's a story of a Wayne County sheriff officer who attempted to serve Kwame Kilpatrick with a subpoena, but when he did, he was assaulted by the mayor and his security team, adding fire to the growing belief that he was moving more like a mob boss and not like the leader of a major city in America. In the middle of all the turmoil he was going through, Kwame would give a very defiant State of the City address on TV, reassuring the citizens of Detroit that he wasn't going anywhere no matter what.
200 messages between the former mayor and Christine Beatty, all exposed for people to read.
Thank you for letting me make you feel good. It gives me so much pleasure to see, feel, and experience you. Christine texts back, that is officially unconditional love. Thank you for loving me like that. The texts are sexually graphic at times between the two and then very romantic. Mayor Kilpatrick, thank you for tonight. That was great QT, my best friend, my soulmate. Christine, you said everything I wanted to say. Ditto and love you. The texts show Kilpatrick and Beatty set up rendezvous, often talking about where they could meet, and they also reminded each other to erase these graphic messages. Mayor Kilpatrick, erase and throw away messages, Ms. Get Caught. Christine, however, I like to sometimes reread my messages from you. They make me smile, and I can feel you when I do.
We've never been in a situation like this before, where you can say anything, do anything, have no facts, no research, no nothing, and you can launch a hate-driven, bigoted assault on a family. I humbly ask members of council, I humbly ask the business community, I humbly ask the religious community, I humbly ask the brothers and sisters of the city of Detroit, I humbly ask that we say no more together. I humbly ask that we say no more together. I love this city with every part of my being, and I will continue to stay focused on building the next Detroit.
To all of you who have stuck with me through very difficult times, to all of you who've prayed for me, I'm sorry for the embarrassment and the disappointment the events of the past few days have caused you. I would never quit on you, ever. We got a lot of work to do, and with your help, I'm going to continue to lead this city in getting the work done.
My husband and I will get through this. Yes, I am angry, I am hurt, and I am disappointed. But there is no question that I love my husband.
Detroit, please continue to pray for our family, for our city, and for our continued progress. God bless you, Detroit. I love you, and I'll see you at work tomorrow.
Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick made history today, pleading guilty to 2 felony counts of obstructing justice by committing perjury. It was the first time in the city's 307 years that a mayor was charged and convicted while in office.
A Free Press investigation exposed text messages showing that the mayor lied under oath during a police whistleblower trial. Kilpatrick's first appearance after the story broke was in a televised address in which he pledged to never quit on Detroit.
Mayor Kilpatrick! Stand strong! Mayor Kilpatrick! Stand strong! The mayor has to go! The mayor has to go!
Controversy and public protest followed Kilpatrick's announcement. As City Council explored ways to remove the mayor from office, Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy announced felony charges. Kilpatrick was arraigned in 36th District Court. Bond terms were set, and calls for the mayor's resignation grew.
Eventually, the governor of Michigan, Jennifer Granholm, would have to get involved, going through litigation to force Kwame Kilpatrick out of office. His political career was in shambles, not to mention that Tamara Greene's family was still campaigning for justice, along with their lawyer Norman Yutuma. He relentlessly applied pressure in the media, claiming that he had overwhelming evidence that the ex-mayor ordered the hit on Tamara Greene and was a part of the cover-up afterwards. He also stated that he had 6 ex-Detroit police officers who were ready to testify on his behalf, that the mayor of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick, is the one who called for the hit on Tamara Greene, as well as the testimony of 2 people who actually claimed to have attended the infamous Manoogian Mansion party, an old friend of Kwame named Wilson K. Jr., and an ex-stripper named Tamika Ruffin, who said that she was paid $1,000 to perform at the party. But in late 2011, Judge Gerald Rosen would rule in the favor of the city. Everyone accused in the case was now found innocent, and the Tamara Greene lawsuit was dismissed.
All these years of speculation, all these years of wondering, now have come to the culmination that there is a decision, and the decision is there is no case.
I'm very pleased. This has been 7 years of my life.
Yutuma says tonight he is baffled. He says he feels sure the city did everything to keep her murder investigation from going forward.
There was not one bit of evidence to that effect.
The new testimony revealed in a court filing today by attorney Norman Yutuma in his legal battle on behalf of the family of murdered dancer Tamara Greene.
The pages in this response brief detail horrifying findings. A homicide file pilfered. It's purged. 9/11 tapes gone missing. Police reports gone. Police investigators working this homicide whose hard drives are wiped clean.
Tamara Greene's family would get some level of justice in 2013, even though it wasn't directly connected to her case. After being forced to step down as mayor in 2008, Kwame was placed on federal probation, and he had numerous issues following the guidelines and rules. He found himself in and out of court answering to the judge about the reasons behind his violations, as well as being sent to jail multiple times due to failing to comply with the terms of his probation. But in March of 2013, his situation would go from serious to downright critical. He was hit with a federal RICO charge, as well as 24 other additional felonies. In October of 2018, he would be sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. He was sent to a correctional institution in El Reno, Oklahoma. The once young, promising politician who held the city of Detroit in the palm of his hands was now an inmate, and his fall from grace was highly publicized. There was a point in time in his political career that he was being compared to Barack Obama, the future president of the United States, and now it was all over. He received more bad news while locked up in federal prison. His wife of over 20 years, Carlita Kilpatrick, decided to divorce him, leaving him to spend decades in prison alone. But unfortunately for Tamara Greene's family, the small semblance of justice that they got was short-lived. Kwame would receive a pardon from President Donald Trump, with the help of an endorsement from celebrity socialite Kim Kardashian, who had taken up an interest in prison reform and began to lobby for Kwame's release. And to add insult to injury, by this point they used up all of their appeal options. and their hopes of getting justice for Tamara was slowly fading. Things got so desperate that the family lawyer, Norman Yatuma, put up $100,000 of his own money as a reward for information on the death of Tamara Greene, but nobody stepped forward. After his release from prison, Kwame Kilpatrick would start a nonprofit organization dedicated to prison reform. He remarried and started a new family as well. He also became an ordained minister, preaching at churches all over America, especially in his hometown of Detroit. But no matter how much time has passed, he's still questioned about the events surrounding the infamous Manoogian Mansion party and the mysterious death of Tamara Greene. Despite the case being over 20 years old, it continues to captivate the public's attention. The story has all the makings of a Hollywood movie: greed, lust, money, and murder. In early 2024, Tamara Greene's name would be trending #1 in the news after her daughter Ashley Jackson went viral on social media telling her story, gaining millions of views on TikTok and YouTube. She spoke about the reasons that she believed that the former mayor had her mother killed. Ashley stated that the connection between her mom and Mayor Kilpatrick was deeper than the Manoogian Mansion incident, saying that one of the main reasons that a hit was really put out on her mom is because she had secretly had the mayor's child. It was the beginning of his political career, and this news would destroy his image as a loving family man, and he couldn't let that happen no matter what. Ashley even called for the former mayor to take a DNA test for her baby sister, whose father was never verified and was less than a year old at the time of Tamara's death. Tamara's daughter opened up on social media about how hard it was growing up seeing her mother's story on the news every other week and constantly being approached by overzealous reporters who would often make promises that they would try to help her solve her mother's case. But usually after they got their story, she never heard from them again. Tamara's mysterious death had a devastating effect on her family, especially her children. After she passed away, they were all split up. The two oldest went to go live with their fathers, who did the best that they could trying to raise their kids in the absence of their mother. Tamara's youngest daughter, India, would be adopted by her brother, who had gone on to become a surgeon and was able to provide her with a privileged life, living in the suburbs of Detroit. But according to her daughter Ashley, things turned out a lot different for her. She went from being able to get anything that she wanted from her mom to living on the edge of poverty, constantly being plagued by the thought that her mom was stolen from her and how much different and better her life would be if she was still around. Listening to Tamara's family speak on her passing, it's obvious that she's truly missed.
Tammy Greene's mother has never wavered. Her daughter's killer, whatever the motive, she says, should be punished to the highest level the law allows.
I would like to see that person come to justice.
Does it bother you that it's taken this long and so far you still?
It don't bother me how long it takes. I just want them to pay for what they did.
You know, he loved her and he talked about her all the time, and I tried to help him keep the positive aspects of his relationship with his mom, like just always remember the good times. You know, it's still a sensitive topic for him in terms of speaking to this, I mean, almost anybody about it.
So how would you describe your relationship with your mom?
Very close, because like we could talk about stuff and like what type of things that I like to do and stuff. We had great times, funny times, also some bad times, but mostly good. Still not over the fact that the whole investigation was covered up. How it relates to Kwame. How could she die over that, and why it's not investigated? And I don't have no clue why.
I grew up in a city where I had to see my mother on the news almost every week until I became an adult, while simultaneously seeing thousands of people support the man who allegedly had something to do with my mother's death. I went from a good life to a struggle life instantly. All three of my mother's children got separated after the funeral. All three of us have different fathers, and that's the life for a lot of people. So Unfortunately, my little sister was barely 1 at the time, and she got adopted by another family member, and I don't know who her father is. My sister's gonna have to get a DNA test on her own. She's an adult now, and I can't make anyone do anything.
To the person or the people who took your mother's life, if you could say something to them, what would you say?
I'd say that I hate them. I do. I hate that my life's the way it is because of something they decided to do.
Who is your mom?
Tamara Greene.
How old were you when you lost your mom?
I was 7. I have a lot of, mental damage from just this one incident. And people don't understand how that affects my entire life.
There are so many different scenarios and theories that surround the death of Tamara Greene, from the infamous party at the Manugian Mansion to the deadly street beef between Eric Mitchell and Direct King, or Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick getting tired of making payments to keep her quiet and decided to put out a hit instead. There's even a lesser-known story about a man that Tamara was dating in the summer of 2002, and he somehow convinced Tamara's grandmother to co-sign for him on an $80,000 BMW. But when their relationship ended, he stopped making payments and took off with the car. Tamara reported the car stolen and would ultimately get it back from the impound. But one night when she was dancing at All Stars, that same vehicle was shot up, being riddled with bullets, and everyone knew that it was her ex-boyfriend who didn't like the way that their relationship ended. So many different stories, but nobody knows for sure, and the case remains a Detroit mystery. Tamara Greene was a beautiful young woman trying to find her way, provide for her kids to give them a better life than she had. But unfortunately, in her pursuit of happiness and money, it got her mixed up with some very nefarious individuals, and the situation turned deadly. And Tamara Greene, she was only 27 years old when she died. Rest in peace, Queen.